Anne Bogart certainly needs no introduction. She's one of the foremost thinkers of theater in the 21st century. Her name will sit alongside Brooke, Grotowski, and Minushkin as one of the most influential forces in directing and training. But I don't just know Anne as a legendary figure, I know her as a mentor and as a friend. I first met Anne in 2003 when I traveled to Chicago to see her production of Bob Rauschenberg America. By then, I'd already devoured her writings into direct repairs and had been experimenting with the viewpoints in my own work for years. And then suddenly, there she was. Not just the author, not just the legend, but a person. Brilliant, rigorous, generous, but unmistakably human. When I later joined Columbia's directing program, I had the privilege of sitting in the room with her every day. Watching Anne at work was transformative. She questioned, she pushed, she wondered, she demanded. Her presence, her tough love, her quiet dignity, they imparted to me and my colleagues not only how to direct, but how to be a director. It's not hyperbole to say that this podcast would not exist without Anne. The kinds of conversations she sparked in us, the kinds of questions she demanded we ask, these are the very foundations of the board of directors. So when I imagined this project, I knew there was only one choice for the very first guest. What you'll hear in this conversation is a kinship, a sense of being fellow travelers, but you'll also hear an artist still at the height of her powers, still asking the deepest questions of how we make and how we live together in this moment. It is my great honor and pleasure to welcome Anne Bogart to the board of directors. So, as I mentioned before, you were the impetus for this entire podcast. And do you remember telling us a story about how you came home from rehearsal one day and that your director friends were in your apartment and they met you at the door? And do you remember telling us that story?
It was actually the house of Joanne Ecolitis, the amazing director. And she was throwing a dinner for was Joe Hodge and Robert Woodruff and Michael Greif, a bunch of really wonderful directors. And they invited me to dinner, and I said I can't go because I have rehearsal.
Mm-hmm.
They said, "Well, come over after rehearsal." And so I came after rehearsal, and I'll tell the rest of that story. As I came in, and they said, "Oh my God, Anne, you've just come from rehearsal. Here, sit down, have a glass of wine. Here, have some food." And I was so happy, and I thought, this is what directors never get, because we always sort of sulk off alone. The actors get to go to the bar together, and the directors are pretty lonely. So it was an unusual situation.
Yeah. And that story stuck with me. It stuck with all of us. How lonely it can actually be. And at the time, we didn't quite understand it. But as the years have gone by and we've had companies ourselves or been freelance, you're right. Walking out of that room is just little, Charlie Brown head drag on the floor kind of thing of, wow, nobody really wants to talk to me because I had to tell them no, and they had to kill their babies today. Which is why I wanted to start the board of directors in the first place of directors. We never get to see each other's work. We can see the final product of it, but we're never in each other's rehearsal rooms. I know that whenever I have a guest come, you'll have donors come or you'll have an artistic director come and sit in. And that's when I'll immediately know all the problems that I've created for myself. So having an audience there is important, but also just having a sense of, oh, okay, I'm not alone in this. It's not all on me. And when I started the board of directors as a monthly get together, it was just kind of, one, it was introducing, maybe, making some connections and making some mentorships for people, but also a sense of saying what are you guys experiencing? What are you coming up with? What are you worried about? What are you finding with either a new generation of actors or a company that is, on the ropes or politically in your region, just talking about those kind of things that only somebody who's kind of leading the room and hearing all of the voices can kind of talk with another person about. So thank you. Thank you for that story back in the day. And thank you for being here with us. It really means a lot
You're
to me.
welcome.
And the name of the board of directors actually came from our class. Our class, we tried to come up with some name for ourselves as a joke, and we named ourselves the board of directors. So that's where that comes from. Did that idea of not having someone to talk to. Is that where the idea of wanting to create an ensemble like SITI came from for you, or were you looking
Oh, I
before
was
that?
just as lonely with an ensemble. That didn't change.
Yeah.
The actors would go to the bar and talk about what the play should be, and I would go home and go to sleep. So, no, wanting an ensemble was just wanting to have a really great group of people around me. But it didn't improve that loneliness of the
Mm.
director at all.
How did what did you do? What like how did you battle that? How do you maintain that or manage that loneliness?
Well, one thing that helps, and you went through the Columbia program, a cohort of 6 directors, young directors at Columbia. So because they study for 3 years, we always have 18 directors, and the cohorts are very strong. You
Yeah.
said you named your cohort, the board of directors. Um, so I think for me, an antidote to that is being in the room so much with groups of 6 directors, where
Mm.
there's really a generosity and an interest in one another. And I think the whole time that I've been at Columbia, which is 30 some years, there was only one cohort that never got along. And it was my fault because it was, I think, my second class or that I chose. And I thought, I'm going to go really diverse here. And I don't mean diversity in terms of racial diversity, I
Yeah.
meant just weird ass people. And within the first 20 minutes of our first class, we knew that it was a bust. And
Oh,
we knew that for 3 years it was not going to work. And everybody stuck it out 3 years. And individually they were great. But
yeah.
as a group, it just didn't work. So it became really important to me how those groups of directors get along and how
Mm.
and their innate generosity and interest in one another and
Mm.
curiosity about one another.
With your director friends, I mean, you mentioned Woodruff, you mentioned Joanne. Do you talk shop, or do you try to avoid talking shop because that's where you spend so much
Yeah, we
time?
usually talk politics or
Uh,
we talk family or talk politics. But I find when you get together directors, you end up not talking about what we're doing in the room, but more about the world we live in, which is
mm,
great.
yeah.
It's actually helpful.
You were already directing outside of SITI. You were doing projects on Broadway and off Broadway opera. Um, do you feel a difference back in the room when you don't have the sense of I have an ensemble that I can go back to? I am a freelance director again. I mean, it's so weird thinking of you as a freelance director, but not
Well,
having a company to come back to and lean on, but going your own direction with your projects.
there's definitely more freedom.
Mhm.
I mean, with City Company, who I adore. I mean, I love every member of that company.
Without saying, of course.
But 30 years of waking up and worrying about unemployment and who's not getting cast and
Yeah.
unfairness and also hearing unhappiness in all those issues.
Mhm.
It's liberating not to have that. And also, you know, the company became so good at working together, I had less and less to do because they would just come up with it. So I feel like I'm more useful in a rehearsal that's not my company at this point.
Mm.
After 30 years, really the company could make shows on their own. They didn't
Yeah.
need me so much because they really knew how to do it. So
Yeah.
so I feel more useful in rehearsals.
And you just finished Carousel? Is that or earlier this
I
year?
did Carousel, yeah, in March, April, last April, yeah, and then I've been spending the summer in a stone house in the Cotswolds writing a new book. So I haven't been in rehearsal. So
Can you talk about? I mean, we could talk about Carousel all day long. An interesting, possibly problematic musical from the standard American songbook kind of things. But how did you become interested in that, and what did you find in it?
well, I've always loved Rodgers and Hammerstein, and I've worked a number of times with Boston Lyric Opera, who were the producers of it. And the first show I did with them was this massive production of *Handmaid's Tale*.
Hmm.
I mean, with like I don't know 70 performers
Oh
and
yeah.
in this huge space that actually had been the had been the model for the Red Hall in the imagination of the writer. Um, and so that was great. And then I did another project with them Bluebeard's Castle, which we also did in an impossible space that was just really thrilling. And so I had a lot of respect for the company because they really take big chances. I'm actually now one of their I'm an associate there. Um, but then they kept asking me, would I like to do this opera or that opera? I kept going, no, I don't really want to do that. Don't really want to do that. And then finally they said carousel. I said, yes.
Mm-hmm.
My whole being says yes. A, opera companies don't normally do American musicals.
Right.
So that to do carousel with the kind of size voices was really appealing to me. And I hadn't planned to do carousel, but the minute they said it, I said every fiber in my being wanted to be in that room.
Mm.
And indeed, the music is extraordinary. And as you mentioned, there are some problematic politics in it,
Mm.
which we dealt with, I think, without actually changing a word of it. We truly dealt with the problems of the political problems. And so it was nothing but a joy to do. And also what's great about Boston Lyric Opera is their casting. They cast the best actor singers.
Yeah.
So I trust them. I'm about to do another show this coming spring, March with them based on Mahler's, in English, it's Song of the Earth, the Das Lied von der Erde
Mm.
by Gustav Mahler. And I'm putting an actor in it and bringing text to it that isn't normally there, but it's a magnificent piece of music, but could not be more different than Carousel.
Right.
Is diametrically opposed. It's like high level classical music. So,
What makes you? I mean, I know your fascination, your love of American theater and Roger and Hammerstein in particular, but what makes you say yes to any project now?
well, there's so much I would not do at this point.
Of
I'm
course.
74. I just turned 74. So
I know. Happy birthday.
when I was thank you very much. When I was younger, I would do pretty much. I did 4 shows a year. I was always like really excited about doing a lot of things. I feel much pickier now. Like the goosebump factor. I won't do something even when I did 4 a year that doesn't give me goosebumps when I think about it, or that I think I don't know how to do this. I can't quite manage it. If my reaction is yeah, I could do that, then I probably won't do it. But in this carousel was such a huge challenge, and its own political issues was part of the challenge, and the size of it. I mean, we did it in a 2,000 seat house, which is where it actually had its out of town tryout. So it was like in the same building with the ghosts of the performers of the original production, with a really large cast. And again, you don't necessarily want to set it in Maine with really quaint accents.
Yeah.
So you have to figure out what is the envelope that you can do this production in, where you maintain the sort of magnitude of the music and the story, but not turn it quaint and not nostalgic. But with Das Lied von der Erde, the Mahler piece, it's just such a magnificent and complicated piece of music. And it's about dying. It was the last piece that Mahler wrote, and the characters in it are dealing with death. And so the actor I'm bringing in, Ellen Lauren, is going to play a character whose child just died.
Phenomenal.
So it has to be a big challenge. I'm also going to do a piece next year for Chuck Mee. And I'm not speaking out of school. I don't think that Chuck would mind me saying this. Is Chuck had polio as a kid, and he's now 87. He's lived longer than most people who've had polio, but he's gotten very feeble, as is the tendency of somebody who's been struck with polio. I want to do this as a gift to him before he dies. I want him to see it. And I'm putting him as a character, an actor playing a character called The Guy. The piece is going to be called, it's the name of one of the shows he's written, but I'm, of course, rewriting it completely with all his other writings and putting in a character called The Guy and using his autobiography where he talks about getting polio. But the name of the piece is is the name of a piece he actually wrote, but I'm not actually doing exactly that. And it's called A Day to Remember Forever. And
Mhm.
Chuck Mead loves New York City. And so this is about his love of New York. And I am determined that he comes to see it in his wheelchair and sees it. And it's really, I'm doing it as a gift to him in
Mm.
that spirit. So it has to be a kind of compelling reason to do
Yeah.
something. I'm not so interested in just staging a play, if you know what I mean.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
interested in study, in learning, and in sharing what I learned. That's the same reason I write books, because I want to study. So it's a similar impulse.
This is a great segue to my next question, which is you're working on a book right now. Can you share some information about what the book is about? What's your
Sure,
interest? What's driving you now?
but I have to spell the title or you won't understand it.
Okay.
The title is Whoness, WHO-NESS, the story of building a character. So, what is your whoness? Who are you?
Mm.
So, it's about character, not only character in theater from across the ages and around the world, what that means, but also character in psychology and
Mm.
philosophy and literature and the building of my own character.
Yeah.
Like how is character different from persona or self, or of all the different versions of self. And I don't believe that we're separate human beings. I believe that we are entwined, deeply entwined in other people. And so this is a book where I got to study character and what that means. And the part I haven't written yet, which is the end, but it seems to be important. I keep avoiding writing it because it's so important in this day and age. I do think you build your character. You
Yeah.
build it out of what is around you. You build it out of what you have. But what kind of character do we need to build to meet the world as it is right now?
Yeah.
And that's the big question that I have to still write. But it's the important question. Because I think the characters that we've been, even through COVID and before that, won't really function so well in light of what's happening in the world, and
No.
particularly in this country, in the
Yeah.
States.
Yeah. Do you think because we are in it, you're having difficulty with that last chapter, or?
Maybe. Well, there was, it comes at the end of the last chapter, and the last chapter I really didn't want to write, but I knew I could not write a book about character without this chapter, which is chapter 13, and it's called Character in the Digital Age.
Oh,
I didn't want to write it because I have to
yeah.
write about avatars, and I have to write
Yeah.
about, technology and AI. And I just was going, I know I have to do it. I really felt when I was writing that chapter, I think it's been whipped into shape a little bit, but I thought I was doing a book report. It felt more like I was doing a term paper or something.
Right.
But I can't write a book about character without having
Yeah.
a chapter about character in the digital age. And that's the last chapter. So I have to end with this big call to arms.
Mm.
And so it's probably a mixture of things that have kept me. I mean, it's also because I'm not in the Cotswolds in a stone house right now. I'm running around New York every day,
Yeah.
so I don't really have time to write. So
Yeah. Time to get back to the UK for that. My students are probably tired of hearing this. I was at MoMA in December, and they had a beautiful exhibit, a video of a dancer, and it's from like a PBS Great Masterpiece series kind of thing. Very quotidian dance, African American dancer in the kitchen. Beautiful piece, and it's about 12 minutes long. But right next to it was a wall, and it was art made by AI.
oh yeah, that's what I thought you were going to talk
Yeah,
about.
and
I don't remember the dancer in the
I,
kitchen at all. I just remember that huge wall of AI
yeah.
art.
And as I'm watching the dance, I'm looking back and forth between the two, and I'm thinking, oh my god, it's only a matter of time before what I'm watching, the dancer, could also be AI, and
Hmm.
therefore I'm never going to know what's real. And
Yeah,
so the only thing that's going to remain real for us is theater, live theater.
yeah,
And I'm telling my students, like, I don't know, you're graduating with a BFA in acting or a BFA in directing, and those actors, half of your career may not be there for you. Film and television may not exist for you at all. And so the only thing we're going to have left is theater. Seeing their faces drop, of course, that was a big realization for them. But there's something to that thing of um, the fakeness of theater is going to be the only authentic thing that we have left. You can't
Yeah,
fake it. You just
yeah.
cannot fake that thing. And it reminds me when you were talking about building that character, it reminds me of Lord Shiva says to his wife, "In you, I see myself." That I can only understand myself through the other person, that
Mhm.
we are inextricably linked to each other. And where are we going to, 10 years from now, if everything is fake and the only thing that we have left live is maybe sports or religion or theater, where are we going to find that other? Where are we going to find that other person to help us define who we are as a character, as a persona? And especially if we are separating ourselves, if we are bifurcating along political, socioeconomic lines. So how does one? I mean, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while since I've come back to America, but you are the greatest thinker on theater that we have.
Oh, you exaggerate. That's
No, no,
not
no.
true.
I
No, no,
don't.
no, because most of what I put out there is stolen from other people's ideas. It's not original.
Okay. You scavenge. That's fine. I understand that, and that's great. So instead of me having to go and try and find those 30 to 80 other ideas, you've got them all there with me.
That
So,
I'll buy. Yes, I do put those things together. Yeah.
and that's just as good in my opinion. I appreciate that so much because when I was in college, A Direct Repairs had come out. And the questions that you're asking in that book, the questions that you're proposing, the thoughts that you're asking were not on my radar at all. There, I'm perpetually widening my view and understanding of the world, and that was a great book to really kind of open my eyes to the questions that of an industry that I was going to be inheriting and going to make work in. And so I love that you're doing this with your new book. But what do you think, a director specifically, how do we address this moment that we are in? How does a young person now, a young director, young theater maker, um, tackle the world that we're in that is perpetually remaking itself on a daily basis, so that you can't even understand what is, because it is now what was, and we're in an ever-present present of constantly trying to figure out when we make a play, it's months. It takes months to make that thing, and then the world has moved so far beyond that from where we started. How do we address this moment? That's my long question there. What do we do,
Well,
Anne?
there's a fallacy in the way you put the question,
Great.
which is if you are so caught up in how to deal with the world as it is, the world is so many things.
Yeah.
I mean, you brought up AI. Certainly, that's one small aspect of the world that's changing.
Mm.
So if you start asking a question like that, people will be overwhelmed. There's nothing to do. There's no way to prepare for all the things, but you can prepare for one thing at a time. So
Mm.
you have to break it down much more. So the way to not get overwhelmed is to decide to make a choice, to make a decision about what you're focusing on, and then focus on it intently.
Mm.
And if you start worrying about the massive changes that are happening, you won't do anything.
Okay. Yes, I buy that. I get that. If you believe that we're on the cusp of these great changes, so not just AI, but let's say late stage capitalism, let's say um, democracy, which didn't think that was going to be up for my bingo card of the 21st century needing to worry about. Um, if you think that all those things are on the cusp of something changing, that 50 years from now we may not look like we look right now, what's the type of work that you want to be making if that is true, if those
Yeah,
things are going to
for
change?
me, for me, the thing I concentrate on, and that's just me, is the sacred line between the actor and the audience.
Yeah.
That circular relationship is to me like going to church.
Yeah.
And I love something that James Imes came and talked to our visiting, you remember visiting director
Oh, I
class. It's
love
now
great
called
class.
Visiting Artists. James Imes, who wrote Fat Ham and Saturday Church, which just opened. He's an amazing guy. And he reminded me of something, because I always think of theater, what distinguishes theater is that it is about how are we getting along.
Yeah.
So, I've been writing on that for a while, but he said theater is there to remind you that we're together. So for me, that's the focus point. That is the sacred, which is why I think he thinks of theater as church.
Absolutely.
So that's the micro aspect of theater that I think is its heartbeat. So I put my attention on that.
Well, can you say that any play is that thing, or do you think that there are plays that obviously there are plays that do that better?
Do you mean play or production?
My fault. That's a false dichotomy of myself. You're right. Any production can do that.
Yeah, no, I see too many where there's a glass wall between the audience and the actors.
Yeah.
And there's no consideration of the actors.
Yeah.
I think one of the first things you have to do when you're directing is you say, at least that's what I think is important, is you have to say, what's the audience's job? What are they doing? Who are they? Not that they'll know it, but if you consider it, they'll feel it.
Yeah.
They will feel considered. So no, I don't think that. I think most productions don't take the audience into consideration enough. I mean, now, there's just like immersive schmersive, like everybody wants immersive, but that's just the sign of an appetite of people to feel considered.
Yeah.
But it needs to be a primary consideration in the theater.
God, I want to talk to you so much about this particular thing. I've been working for years on a pedagogy called audience making, wherein the audience member is considered from the choice of play all the way to post-production process of what is it that we need to do to, who do they need to be? As you said, how do we cast them? Who do they need to be? Who is the ideal person that we want to walk into the room and see the play? That the play is a centralizing thing. It's the thing that brings them together. I'm not so interested in upending what the play is, but everything before, when the audience comes in, to the lobby, to the marketing, to how we can give them information before they come in, and then they're there, and then afterwards, post-show discussion, 2 to 3 weeks after the show, when the memory starts to fade, how does it continue to resonate in them? And I'm so interested in that, and I think that's where a real strength of ours is going to be, as we continue to get further bogged down by technology. I could talk to you about this all day long.
Well, I do want to say one thing which backs up to your question about what do you do in the overwhelmingly accelerating environment you're in. And when I was in college, I was part of a theater company we called Via Theater. And we called it Via Theater because we were interested in those days. It was in the hippie days. We were interested in Jerzy Grotowski and his notion of via negativa. And so that was interesting. So we called it Via Theater. But as time goes on, I realized that Via Theater is probably the best name for a theater company ever, because what we're doing is Via Theater.
Yeah.
What we look at politics via theater, we look at relationships via theater. It's a focusing lens, and so in a sense, you have to, if you're going to use theater as a focusing lens, then you have to say, what is the DNA of theater? And that goes to that notion of audience and actor, is the idea of remembering that we are together.
We had Andre de Shields in one of our visiting artist class. I think
lovely man.
What a lovely man. And one of the things I remember the most that he said was, a lot of us think of theater as a way of life, but he wanted us to reframe it as a theater as a way to life.
That's great. Yeah.
That,
it's so funny that you mentioned him. I just want to say something about him because, he's at the height of his career.
Yeah.
But years ago, I can't remember, what year did you graduate from Columbia?
2010.
Yeah, this was, I think, even in the 90s. He was at a slump in his career, and he was in one of the directors' theses. And it was
Wow.
when it was in the dumpiest place. It was when we used to have to do theses in teachers' college,
Oh,
in the dumpiest,
yeah,
horriblest theater space in the
yeah,
basement.
yeah,
And he was barefoot, like, and he was his attitude. And here he was, twice as old as most of the students going
yeah,
through. His generosity and warmth
yeah,
in that situation, he just wanted to act,
yeah.
and that's why he is great as he is. I love what you said that he said. I think it's great. But I just wanted to put in a word for him, as he's somebody who demonstrably has dedicated himself to theater.
Yeah, I completely believe that story. Just having met him a couple of times, just he. I want to have that energy and have that same drive and that same force and political fervor as I advance into my career as well. So
Yeah.
that's he was a it was a great person to have. Um, can theater be? Let me preface this question where we're a couple weeks after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and a lot of graduate programs are shutting down, college programs are rethinking things, theaters are wondering where their funding is coming from. If I were an artistic director or even a dean of a school right now, I wonder if I would have the courage to do something like Assassins or Crucible, put that in my season. And I'm wondering if I would have that courage, or I would understand why not to do that. Can theater be too political, or is that a false dichotomy, do you think?
Well, I think you should always ask if this is the right time to do with Assassins. The context in which we're living should determine the play, and who needs who needs to hear it, what is it about, who's it about, who's performing it. All those questions
Mm,
are really key. But I have to say, during COVID, people got really fragile. Even before COVID, starting about 2019, students in universities everywhere, including at Columbia, became overly sensitized. Don't you know? Don't I can't touch your shoulder. I have to say, can I touch your shoulder?
mhm,
The language, couldn't use the word rigor, because some people can't be rigorous. You're being ableist. There was such a terror.
mm,
But something has changed in a way that I find spectacular, which is suddenly the directors who are applying to Columbia, who are now in Columbia, the new cohort that came in, have a strength that is unbelievable. And they
mm.
don't give a crap about anything except making art. They don't expect to have a career given to them when they get out.
Yeah,
It's an appetite, and all of that fragility is over. It's gone.
that's great.
And they're thinking outside the box, the way they're thinking about what they're putting on stage. I'm finding, and they're working hard, and there's been a sea change in a very, very good way.
Mhm,
And so I'm delighted, and I feel suddenly freed. That kind of fragility
mm,
is over.
yeah,
There is such an attack on people of color in this country. There
mhm,
is right now an attack on immigration, on immigrants, on people who actually have. You know what I heard yesterday, Adam?
mm,
Rena, who's in London, told me she was talking with somebody who has a friend who's Canadian, who went to visit a friend in from Canada, went to visit a friend in Boston, and at the border was asked, "What do you think of Trump?"
oh
And
god,
he answered something negative. The guy at the garter takes out a stamp, stamps the passport, said, "You cannot come into the
yeah,
States for another 5 years."
yeah,
5 years. Now, why this is so shocking is because I'm watching constantly the abuse of immigrants by ICE agents, and the tying them up and sending them to other countries. That's horrifying. But to hear that, talk about the banality of evil,
yeah,
in that little detail, that stamp, you can't come in for 5 years because he said something unsupportive of Trump.
yeah,
that's the world we live in. There is no room to be fragile. And therefore, that's why I say, what kind of character do you need to build to live in this world? You
Yeah.
can't live in the world in the way you did 5 years ago. You just can't. You need a different kind of character to meet it. Interestingly enough, a lot of theaters in New York are miserable because there's so much difficult times. The funding has been cut. The theaters that I find the happiest are places like La Mama, where they don't have what all these other big theaters have, but they have force and a sense of adventure, and they're happy. I like working at La Mama now because everybody's happy and they're doing their best.
Well, they've been scrounging for 50 years, so this isn't new to them.
Yeah, it's fantastic. They're fantastic.
Yeah. I love that you said that there's an anti-fragility in the new directors that are coming in, that they are meeting this moment with, like, I can't, while I know that this is not the world that I want to have, I have to be the person right now in the world that exists making this work. Without necessarily talking about what you're looking for in a Columbia director, what is it that you think directors now need to have other than this anti-fragility? Like, what's going to make this next generation of directors carry the story of theater forward, do you think?
Courage and curiosity.
Yeah. That's always been I would say that, 15 years ago, you would have said the same thing, but there's something different about it now. So courage and curiosity. I'm going to keep reinvestigating that.
I think that the danger, if you say courage and curiosity, is one start. I heard you breathe. Like, oh God, yeah. Is that the danger is to think, oh, in big things, I have to be courageous and curious. But actually, you have to practice on a mini scale.
Yes.
Like which direction you take when you're walking.
Yeah.
Like make the curious and courageous choice. And if you practice that in many ways, when it comes to the big mega ways, you'll be fine. But there's a danger to think, oh yeah, I'll wait to be courageous and curious when the stakes are really high. But no.
But that's not how you build character.
No,
you build character brick by brick.
Maybe you're helping me write that final thing. Yeah.
I have a suspicion you probably haven't seen this show, but I'm just going to ask the question anyway. There was a show on Disney Plus called Andor, and it's about the rebel spy who led up to the Star Wars, the Death Star being blown up. And the whole premise of the show, beautiful show, it really is a gorgeous show, written and directed by Tony Gilroy. And the whole premise of the show is that it is all of the little brick by brick work of people that lead to the revolution. That,
really?
We watch Star Wars and we think Luke Skywalker did all the work, but actually the series is 2 seasons, 10 episodes each, and it shows you all of the people who little tiny things that they did led to toppling of the empire. And I'm watching that again right now and thinking about that.
Oh, I'm going to watch it. I have read good things about it, and I never have watched it, but I'm going to watch it.
It really is phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
Great.
I mean, there are no lightsabers in it. You don't have to worry about any space ninjas. It really is beautiful world building in an Eleanor Fuchs way and really great writing. So I highly recommend that.
I will. Yeah, thanks.
I had a student ask me this question the other day, and it kind of floored me. And I really want to thank Emma for this question. And I'm going to ask this of you. What is a show that changed your habits as a director or a person?
Well, the first show I ever saw, professional show I ever saw, changed
Macbeth.
Me completely.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, I didn't understand a word of it because it was Shakespeare. I'd never heard Shakespeare before I was 15. And it was staged in a way where the witches were coming out of the ceiling. And, it was so radical. I said, it changed my whole life, and I realized theater is not about understanding at all. It's about me bringing all of my sensibilities as a 15-year-old to something I didn't understand. So that's always affected how I make theater. It's not making making it understandable is of no interest. It's of making it have presence and resonance is more important. But then all of the work of Ariane Mushkin did the same thing to me. She really, she just made communities that were so attractive to me.
Same.
And that I never wanted to leave,
I think, you're right. I need to change my answer. The answer that I gave, now that I think about it, when you took us to the cartoucherie, they were working on Les Ephémères, which then came to Lincoln Center the next summer. And I think actually that walking through, having a meal beforehand with the company, walking through the dressing room, having to pass by Ariane, who's in a beautiful blue sweater and just shaking people's hands, just so unassuming. The company coming out and giving us tea and cookies for intermission. Yep. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That changed how I make theater and operate in the world.
What was the answer that you gave that you want to change?
Well, I told her Sleep No More, and not because I think that it's a great show, but I'd seen it 15 times because if you remember, Michael worked on it before coming in, and so I got to see it in Boston before it transferred down to New York, and then I just kept, whenever I come back, it was still on, so I'd always go and see it. The first time I watched it as a show. The second time I watched it, I tried to figure out the structure, the pattern. The third time I watched it, I decided to open drawers and see, how far the scenography goes. The fourth time I watched it for the audience, and I realized, oh, this is what I'm interested in. That they've thought of all of us here, that we're allowed to do this. What does the psychology of the mask do to allow us to feel like we can sometimes do some pretty bad things, as we've heard from the actors of that show? And so continually going with other people, watching them watch it. I think that's what led me to the audience making part of it. But you're absolutely right. R.A. Minushkin was already doing that, setting that audience making up beforehand. So that's why I have to change that.
You should have Michael Garver on, because she's doing such crazy things with her business, and she has huge theories about it.
I know.
You know that.
I love her to death. She will be on here for sure. And we, is definitely somebody that I want to talk to about this. I got to see, because we were actually partners in the audition weekend. And
I don't remember that. Yeah.
And we stayed friends throughout the process of waiting to hear, and then afterwards. So I got to go to Chicago and see her last production with her company and stay on her couch and do all that. So she's been thinking about this for a long, long time. So it doesn't surprise me what she's done, from Star Wars Cruiser to LA River to now having this giant company that she's running. And she told us some other things that she's working on, which fingers crossed could be really cool. But also, what a great segue this is, which is my last question is, 3 directors that you're looking out for right now. Who should we be, or who should I ask to come on the podcast? Who are people that are really interesting to you right now that are fascinating you with their work?
You should talk to Jay Scheib. Jay's doing things that I think are so interesting. Like, he did the Meatloaf musical, Bat Out of Hell, and then he was in Bayreuth doing a Wagner. And I think that sort of wide thinking is great. The other, you should get Rachel Chapkin on, because she's so deeply political and politicized, and yet in the trenches with commercial theater and also having a company. I think she's really somebody interesting. Those 2 I would suggest.
Rachel was already on my list. I hadn't thought about Jay, and he's still running the theater program at MIT, right? Is that correct?
Yeah.
What a fascinating.
He seems to like it. Yeah.
What a fascinating.
I know. I don't think he needs to financially, because I asked him about, Bat Out of Hell. He said, "Yeah, it's my ATM machine."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I remember.
But I think he loves it at MIT.
Yeah. What amazing kind of interdisciplinary study you can have and just pull from anything, and he's on the forefront of asking those questions. Yeah, thank you, Anne, for coming and being
welcome.
my guest on this. It's been a great inspiration for the longest period of time and continue to be. And my students, like I said, we're using directorial pairs to start our conversation. So I can't wait to hear about who-ness. Do you know when?
Yeah, but meanwhile, you should look at The Art of Resonance. I'm very proud of that book. Yeah.
Well, we go through all of them. So this semester is
Okay,
directorial pairs. Next semester is, and then you act what's the story.
And then who-ness will be ready for you soon. Okay.
Great. Perfect. Look forward to it. Thank you for joining Board of Directors. We are a global constellation of theater directors dedicated to building community, sharing knowledge, and transforming the role of the director in the 21st century. We foster fellowship, community, and belonging among directors globally, facilitating cross-cultural exchange and artistic mobility, advancing ethical leadership and field-wide transformation. We support artistic and pedagogical innovation, building a curated network of directorial voices shaping the future of performance. Join us again next time on the Board of Directors podcast, where we collectively learn how to be a director together.